Hello, everyone. Welcome to the VarsityWA Midweek Podcast. I'm Todd Milles, your host. It is Regional Basketball Week, the first week of the WIAA state playoffs for all 6 classifications, with berths available to the Tahoma Dome, the Yakima Valley Sun Dome, and the Spokane Arena for next week. We will have Blake Conley, our boys basketball correspondent, to talk about some of the intriguing regional matchups, and Pete Smith to talk about the girls' matchups. And then Matt Evans from Evans Rankings will join us to talk about some of the questionable seeding decisions made Sunday, as well as a double-digit seed that could create some issues in not only the regional round, but next week in the state tournament. Stick around for a good show. Welcome back to the first segment of the VarsityWA Midweek Podcast, joined by Blake Conley, maybe the busiest ex-basketball coach in the state of Washington over the last week, fresh off serving on the 4A state bracket selection committee for boys basketball, willing to talk about maybe some criteria that fans don't understand. They kind of see the seeding and questions might pop in their mind, like, you know, how does a Puyallup team with 6 or 7 losses suddenly, why are they, a protected seed, and other teams maybe that have been ranked higher or whatever sort of drop behind? There's a lot going on here, Blake. Are there a couple just general bullet points that you like to touch on in terms of what you guys kind of weigh heavily when it comes to seeding these schools?
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting to look at some of the different classifications, and I don't think one's doing it better than others, but I would guess that the 4A boys, we had a really good group who were all on the same page, had some great dialogue, but I think that some of our things that we were valuing, that we looked at together as a group, were maybe a little bit different than what the 3As and 2As seem to value, and that's okay. I think as long as there's dialogue, there's equal representation, and people are talking about it. So I can speak for the 4A. I think some of the things that we look at is it is a body of work, and it's hard to it's kind of hard to look at the beginning of the year versus the end of the year, but that does matter. Like there's the November games at the end of November were so long ago. Teams are so different. Players are different. Mount Si, for example, they lost their first game of the year, and they didn't have Lat Ford, they didn't have their head coach. And they're just a very improved basketball team. And all these teams, if you made it to this point, you have improved and you've had a great season. But I think some of those things that, like, we did look at this, how the end of the year, kind of progressed. And the team you mentioned, Puyallup, they are hot right now. They lost a lot of close games at the beginning of the year, and they seem to kind of figure it out. And, for example, they split with ER, but Puyallup won the last 2 games against Emerald Ridge. And so that mattered. And that's why they were able to that's why they got the seed that they did at 6, and ER was at the 7. So some of those things. I think the thing that also we looked at is we look at, wins against the field, and you can't predict that during the season. And that's something we kind of talk about, how many wins against the top 16 RPI, and then we do look at, did they play anybody in the 3A? For example, West Valley beating Bellevue. That was a win that we talked about. And so there's some of those things that go on, but beating other teams who ended up having great seasons, that did matter. And so sometimes when you look at a team who maybe didn't have who people were a little bit surprised they weren't high enough, you kind of have to say, well, they didn't play as many teams that made the field, no fault to them. But that is something that we kind of consider when we're having 2 teams that are close together, especially.
There are a lot of powerhouse schools that get out of state, especially during the holidays, go play in big tournaments, or like to play out of state opponents. Richland, for example, playing 3 Utah opponents. Having talked to a couple other selection committee members, technically you're not supposed to weigh that into the equation. Should out of state games carry a little bit of weight, no weight, more weight? Do you have an opinion on that, Blake?
Yeah, I think it's so difficult to it's so difficult to go like have all the committee members. We're trying to keep track of the district tournaments and the by district tournaments as they're happening, and then all of a sudden go, okay, these two teams, now we need to go look up these four California teams and really jump into this a whole nother pool of how good was this California team. This California team is 18-2, but I'm not familiar with that. So we did bring some stuff up from out of state, whether just talking about it. Maybe this team went 3-1 in a really good California tournament or whatever. And the thing we did notice about Richland, or somebody brought up, is a really good point about Richland, is they always play in this really tough Utah tournament. And they went 3-0 in it this year. And usually they, even with the amazing teams that Richland has produced in the last decade and beyond that, just the tradition of Richland basketball. From what we knew, I don't know if they've gone 3-0 at that tournament anymore. And they did. They went 3-0. So we did kind of notice that. But I just think it's too much if you are going to not count it in the RPI, like we have decided in the WIA. It just is, it's too much information to process for us to really say, like, to really weight those teams. So if I was to tell coaches, it's great to do that. I love taking my teams to California, the bonding and the competition, that those things are great. But just if you do think you're a top team, make sure you're scheduling some good in-state competition in your classification. Makes it even easier for the committee.
Yeah, and I think no doubt about it, Mount Si had one of the toughest schedules in 4A across the board and in their own league. Let's talk a little bit about some of the regional round matchups, Blake, after you guys did the difficult job of seeding these teams. Let's start in 4A, either in the protected seed bracket or the unprotected seed brackets. I guess which matchup kind of intrigues you the most, Friday or Saturday?
I think for me, the Glacier Peak and Gonzaga game, I think, is going to be a great basketball game. It's two teams that are extremely well coached, very deliberate in what they do. Two good defensive teams. If you look at what Glacier Peak has held teams to, and they're just extremely well coached. I think they're very similar in terms of the things that they want to do. They want to run their stuff. They will fast break, and that's, if you watch the Richland Gonzaga game, Gonzaga wasn't afraid to go out and in a 3-on-2 break. They weren't walking up the court every time, but they don't mind playing in a half court game either. So I think that's going to be a really fun one in that 4-5 matchup. And then really, like, Puyallup is on such a run right now. Can they keep it going as the 6 seed versus the 3 seed Lake Washington? Lake Washington, 3 of their losses were against Mount Si, and they're the number 1 team. So this is a really good Lake Washington team. They're very deep. They got a lot of kids that can score. That Glacier Peak and Lake Washington semifinal in the by district, Lake Washington won at the last second on a fake handoff. Great play call. And just for them to win like they did, then they lost to Mount Si again. But that's going to be a really good game to see if Puyallup can just, can cool off a little bit, because they are just playing with a lot of confidence right now from a team that went to the state championship last year. So they know how to do this. They got a lot of returners from that team. So those are the two, especially, that I think are going to be really good. And then, the one that the 1A game, the West Valley going and playing against Mount Si, that's not none of these games are easy with these teams left, but I think West Valley they got a few kids that can really score. They have experience from the Dome last year. So, Mount Si I think that could be a good game as well.
Yeah, obviously one of the more open classification brackets in the state of Washington, the 4A bracket, led by Mount Si at 1 and Richland at 2. Let's take a look at the 3A bracket. I don't think anybody's surprised that Rainier Beach grabbed the top overall seed, then O'Dea, then Mount Spokane, then Eastside Catholic. Any of that was O'Dea? If you were looking at 3A basketball and were on that committee, would O'Dea have been your number 2 team, or how would you have looked at it?
I think O'Dea being number 2 was as easy as Rainier Beach being number 1. I think that was, the way that they played Rainier Beach this year, the way they played their competition. I think that was an easy one. And the Metro, rightfully so, has a lot of respect. And that was clearly shown by the committee. Mount Spokane at 3, I guess, was a little bit surprising to me. I know that and that's what the committee's for, is to, they were missing, their best player, but they also showed that they can win the district championship without him. So But them jumping all the way to 3 was a little surprising to me, but I think it's very warranted, and it sounds like he's coming back, so I think that's a big one for them. So I totally understand that. And then Eastside Catholic and Bellarmine, I think that's a really fun matchup at the 4-5, and for the Metro to have 3 of the top 4 seeds, I think that's kind of what the committee is for, because I know that we can remember some of those days when they had these set spots that teams were supposed to go into, and you just have these really powerhouse Metro matchups just because a team finished 3rd in the Metro. Well, now the committee can make those adjustments to try to get the most balanced field and not penalize a team for being in a bracket with, or in a league with O'Day and Rainier Beach.
Yeah, Dave Wagenblas confirming to VarsityWA today that Jaden Goreshi is going to be back from his long illness in Tacoma. Not sure for this weekend. But will be, if he's cleared, will be back and playing in the Tacoma Dome. That's great news for the Wildcats. Interesting, the 2A selection committee, and I get a peek behind the curtain, so to speak, and get to kind of look at some things, and without divulging, privileged information. But it looked like the 2A number 1 Bremerton, number 2 Ari Long, both. There was some consensus there that maybe Ari Long, undefeated, great season down there. They obviously have played without one of their key players in the front court. Could have been a number 1 seed. There was some talk about them being the number 1 seed. Bremerton's 2 losses without Jalen Davis. He was hurt with an ankle injury, suffered in the Eastside Catholic game. They're both their losses to bigger schools, Eastside Catholic, Glacier Peak. Just kind of looking, I mean, you get to kind of look at some other classifications, and I know you're a little more on the periphery on this, Blake, but would that be an interesting discussion for you in a committee? Those 2 particular schools, one undefeated with an injury, and obviously Bremerton with 2 losses to bigger schools with the injury to their key player as well.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good point. And you see that, and you saw that with even with Mount Si and Richland, where you have an undefeated team, but a team has a little bit better resume. Where then we went with the team with a little bit better resume, putting Mount Si 1 and Richland 2, and those easily could have been switched, and no one would be surprised if either of those teams win the state championship. At the 2A level, there, yeah, I mean that's really tough, because you don't want to. The thing that I hear from coaches when I talk to them throughout the years, they just don't want it to be the point where if a loss against a really good team like Bremerton went out and scheduled some big 4A teams and 3A team in Eastside Catholic, you don't want to punish them, because if they would have played 2A teams in those slots, even without Davis, that's a team that they could have easily been undefeated. And so you just don't want to incentivize a team to not play these great games in the regular season, not go to these tournaments, MLK games, all those things they do. I think that's what's best. That's what's best for the sport. It's what gets you ready for the playoffs. So I just think I like that the committee did that, of going, this is we're not going to punish them for not being undefeated, because look who they lost to. They lost to some very good teams with the best, second best player, whatever you want to say, one of the best players in the state of Washington. That wasn't at full strength. So I think that I would have put Bremerton number 1. I have not done nearly as much work, but I think that's what the committee's for. Is RPI is great, and it's a good way to start. But there are some things like that you want to make sure to factor in as you go.
Yeah. Other classifications: Zilla number 1 in 1A, followed by Linden Christian and Royal. Colfax, no surprise, undefeated number 1 team in 2B. And those Lummi Nation Blackhawks, I think, defending state champs, number 1 seed in 1B. I can't wait to get it started. It's starting tonight in 3A and 1B with the pigtail games, and then we go full bore into the regional round. And then next week, obviously, the destination in Tacoma, Spokane, Yakima. I know Blake Conley will be somewhere in a gymnasium, or at least paying attention, after the great job his committee and every selection committee member did on Sunday. Blake, thanks for joining the podcast. Great work. And we'll talk after the maybe going into Tacoma next week, or the dome stuff, or maybe afterward, and we can kind of wrap it up and see how everything plays out.
Look forward to it.
Welcome back to the second segment of the VarsityWA Midweek Podcast. I'm Todd Milles, your host. Joining us to talk about some of the girls basketball regional brackets, Pete Smith, the former coach with the Tahoma girls. He's been our girls basketball correspondent all season. Thanks for joining us, Pete. You saw the brackets like everybody else on Sunday. Just some of your general impressions about the way things shook out.
Oh yeah, Todd, thanks for having me. Again, this is we're at the final exam time of the year, and this is the best time of year. You get to start filling out some brackets and seeing how far people can go in this tournament. Again, best time of the year. State of Washington does a really good job with the three tournaments. I guess six tournaments, but three locations, and it's a very exciting time of the year. Seeding is always tricky. I mean, you see it in the college level. There's such a human element into selecting teams and placing them and where they should be. And that's the fun of sports, especially now being on the outside. You get to have that debate of should they be there? Should they be that high? Should they be that low? But it all takes care of itself on the court. And so you just got to go out there and play your game and deal with what you got one game at a time. Let's jump into 4A. Can we just start there? Does that sound good
Absolutely.
to you?
You're suddenly take over the show, man.
Okay, man. All right. So I think the first thing that kind of going back to how we started this podcast, we looked at 4A and we was like, all right, Davis, can they repeat? And now that we're here, is there anybody that can beat them? And I think there's some intriguing matchups along the way with a lot of other teams. I'm still on Davis. I still think that they have the scoring ability and the depth of scorers. So like if I'm placing a bet, like I'm still taking Davis. That being said, Sumner losing in the quarterfinals of the district tournament, that's their opening game. Now, luckily, they get to play a game and then get to have some rest. But the loser of that game is going to have a long road ahead of them, and they're going to be worn down by their opponent. So the first matchup that jumps out to me is Davis and Sumner. Then you got, and then just kind of looking at Chiawana goes ahead and wins District 6, beating Gonzaga Prep, handing them their first loss of the season. And so you got two really good teams right there. And then Woodinville, as a 3 seed in the District 1 and District 2 tournament, gets the 4 seed. And so now they get to play Gonzaga Prep in the opening round. And so it's just like you got some really intriguing opening round and a lot of travel happening in the opening round, which makes this opening round just even more exciting because you got people traveling on to both sides of the state before they actually get to the Tahoma Dome. Out of that opening round, though, I'll turn this back on you, Todd. What jumps out at you? Like what catches your eye?
Well, I'm going to put it right back on you because I want to ask you about psychological warfare between you mentioned Sumner and Davis playing again. These teams will play for the third time in a calendar year.
Yeah.
Sumner did go over to Davis and win at Davis in the regional round a year ago. Only team in Washington the last almost 2 seasons from Washington to beat them. And then a week later, Davis beats Sumner in the state championship game. So heading back to this year's regionals, Coach Pete Smith, I mean, who has the mental advantage in this game? Is it Sumner that knows they can win at Davis, or is it Davis, having gotten the best of Sumner in their last matchup?
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, you could take this a couple different ways. I think Sumner, been there, done that, like, hey, like that's the message I'm preaching as a coach. Like we've had this exact same matchup in the exact same round. We've made this trip, to the east side of the state, and we've come up with a W, and we've got to have a good bus ride home. That's the same message I'm preaching, and I love this matchup in that case. If you're Davis, you're like, okay, we've been here. It didn't go our way last time, and we really had to grind for 4 days at the Tahoma Dome. How nice would it be able to sit back on that first day of the tournament and just watch. And so I'm going to assume that they took notes from last year, and they're going to learn from that as well, and they're going to be ready. They're not going to underestimate anybody coming into this tournament. So that's the way I'm looking at it, just as a matchup perspective. Honestly, I don't know who has the matchup advantage here. I was thinking about this game in particular, kind of going back. I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. Eastlake was the 8 and Woodinville was the 1, and they end up matching up in the first round just like this. And Eastlake goes ahead and wins the state tournament. So it's just who shows up that night and gets the win, because if there's an upset here in any of these games, it flips the bracket. It really does. I mean, I remember the year we ended up taking third. Woodinville was the 1 seed, and I think they lost to Emerald Ridge, and Camas got to play Woodinville. The 1 and 2 seed got to play in the round of 8, the quarterfinal, and we got to play the winner of that game. So it's just how this all works out. Like, this first round is so crucial to your path if you're trying to go get yourself a gold ball.
There's a reason why Akil Smith has been, behind the scenes asking, what are the chances of seeing Sumner again? He knows Sumner with great variance. There's no team in 4A that has a greater variance than Sumner. They have talent. They can beat the number 1 team in the state, and they can lose to the number 16 seed if they're not all in. So it's a very sort of Jekyll and Hyde team with a great track record. They've done everything but win a state championship, and there's a rematch with those 2 teams Saturday night in Yakima.
Before we go on, I think if I'm looking at one player that I'm most intrigued watching, and as well as the team, I'm really excited to watch Brooklyn down at Union play in the state tournament. I think she's going to shine. Like, I think this is the moment that she's been waiting for, and I think she's getting it. And so I don't know what's going to happen, but I know watching Union play is going to be a really fun watch. So I'm definitely tuning in, and I know Bothell is physical, and so that opening round matchup intrigues me as well. Just looking at those 2 teams play.
Yeah, you're talking about District 3-4 champion Union with Brooklyn Haywood, the Oregon signee. They were in the state tournament last year and were upset by Glacier Peak, the number 2 overall seed, and the very dominant run through the District 3-4A tournament. Let's look at the 3A tournament, Pete. In Bellevue, kind of the consensus number 1 all year. They had a couple hiccups along the way, but I think the unanimous number 1 seed, followed by Snohomish, Ridgeline over there with Freddie Recco, the former Central Valley coach, at 3, and Roosevelt at 4. That seeding that makes sense to you? And what is there a matchup in 3A that you really intrigues you?
Yeah, I think we talked about this last week going in, or a couple weeks ago going into districts. The District 1, District 2, the Stanwood, Snohomish, Edmonds, Woodway, those 3 teams kind of intrigued me, and it kind of really worked out between those 3, just kind of how they were seated. Again, same question I talked about with Davis. Like, has my mind been changed along the journey here? And I would say no. Like, again, no. My mind, the eye test, I still have Bellevue. Now this is a bigger bracket because there's just more teams involved because of the amount of 3A teams there are. But my eye just immediately goes to the 6-3 and then the 5-4 games. So North Thurston and Roosevelt, and Eastside Catholic and Ridgeline. I just think both those games are very evenly matched games that could go either way. And again, just kind of going back to these opening rounds, these flip the bracket. If there's, according to seeding, if there's any upset based on seeding, it just flips the bracket and just makes that path. That path is just becomes challenging, and you have to play a better, more quality team earlier on, which in turn just wears your legs down, and it just makes it harder to continue that success as you go out through the tournament playing 3 or 4 straight days.
We talked a lot about Linden. You're big on Linden. You're big on their defensive posture. They're still on their stuff. Yes,
Yep. Haven't left it. I won't say it.
Rolled through the District 1 tournament up there with Squalicum, Archbishop Murphy, Seaholm. They look like they're they're kind of the freight train on the tracks right now. Deer Park, the 2 seed, Prosser, the 3 seed. Can anybody stay with Linden? I mean, Linden's won the last 2. They have the experience. They've been under the big lights with this group in Yakima. And then as you know, this 2A field is a quality 2A field that
it really is.
They're beating. Is there anybody in 2A that's ready to step up to this challenge, Pete Smith? Anybody in your mind?
Yeah, that's again, I'll go back to the same question I said for 4A and 3A, and I'll just quickly say no. I don't think so. But Linden, the way they're slotted, as long as they take care of business against Sela in the opening round, they're most likely going to play either Deer Park or Ellensburg in their quarterfinal matchup. Deer Park, and again, the loser, the Ellensburg Deer Park, that's the most intriguing game to me to start off in the opening round for 2A. The loser of that game is going to play on the round of 12, and assuming that they win, they're going to play Linden in the quarterfinals. Ellensburg, been there, done that. I've talked about them. They're still on my radar. Again, the experience goes a long way, and all it takes is one night. And we all know the first half of basketball playing in the Dome, doesn't matter how ready you are, shots sometimes don't go in, your eyes aren't adjusted. And that, again, that's what I love about Linden is they just can get stops. They can weather that storm of a cold start. But having that day under your belt allows you to get off to a quick start. And that's what it's going to take to beat Linden. And so that Ellensburg Deer Park matchup really just intrigues me because that's most likely who Linden is going to be playing in that quarterfinal matchup.
Yeah. And one of those teams will have a Wednesday game to play. So they'll have a game under its belt. 2 teams that have gone very far in the tournament. Ellensburg, obviously, the finalist to Linden the past 2 seasons. I know they graduated a lot of players, but still has some of those key players. Bella Standish being one of those back at Ellensburg. Pete Smith, you know these 2 weeks very, very well. All over the state, it's going to be such a fun 2 weeks. Lots of really good basketball on the horizon. First this week, all around the state at regional sites, and then Tacoma Dome, Yakima Valley Sun Dome, Spokane Arena next week, where it all wraps up.
Get out and watch some girls hoops.
Amen. Really
quality stuff out there.
Hey, we just got word tonight. Olivia Edwards, the number 2 recruit in the country from Lincoln of Tacoma, sparked a big regional pigtail play-in game victory for the Abes over University in Spokane.
Wow.
So Olivia Edwards is going to be playing in a packed, talent-laden regional site in Bellevue College this weekend where Tyron Stokes, the number 1 boys recruit in the country, will be playing for Rainier Beach on Friday, and then Olivia Edwards and her Lincoln Aves will be playing the Lakeside Lions the following day at Bellevue College. So if you can only get out to one site, come out to Bellevue College to see the 2 best players in the state of Washington, boy and girl, try and keep their postseason dreams alive. So thank you, Pete Smith, for joining us. We'll talk soon, my friend, and have a great time.
All right. Thank you.
Welcome back to the final segment of the VarsityWA Midweek Podcast. Todd Milles, your host here, welcoming our regular guest from the Tri-Cities, the one, the only, Matt Evans from Evans Rankings. who probably got to read the most strings of complaining emails, texts, DMs, um, tweets about the WIAC. It happens every year. Nobody's happy. Everybody can do it better. I mean, I don't think the regular Joe realizes how difficult being in a committee with 6, 7 other people and making these decisions is. Yes, there are things we could criticize, and we will do that. I want to ask Matt maybe the seating decision that the committee made that maybe sets with him the least or the worst. But all in all, I think you and I can agree. With the data that they use and the criteria that the WI instructs them to utilize, I think they do a pretty admirable job.
I agree with that. And just to add a little bit, we've served on committees. I've served on the football committee, and I know how difficult that was. And that's just watching games one night, maybe 2 a week. These guys have games every single night. So, the amount of basketball that they're consuming, the amount of information they're consuming is just tenfold what I did. And so while, yes, I'm going to criticize some of the stuff, I have the utmost respect for all of the effort that these guys are putting in. And I just want to preface that before we get into what we're about to talk about.
Regional play-in games tonight, Tuesday, and then the regional round starting Friday and continuing through Saturday all over the state and in all 6 classifications. Spots up for grab to the Tahoma Dome, Yakima Valley Sun Dome, and the Spokane Arena. Let's talk about some of the decisions that you kind of go, I think that was a miss. Let's start in 4A, either boys or girls. The thing that maybe bothers you the most about a seating decision there.
In 4A, I really don't have anything that really jumps out too much to me. I think that if I was one gripe that I have, I think that on the boys' side, I probably would have put Auburn in at the 8 seed and dropped West Valley to 9. I know that, obviously it's a district champion spot there involved with West Valley, but I think that Auburn has played, I think they have a more rounded resume than West Valley does. And I probably would have, I probably would have made that switch. But then again, like I said, I do understand why they put West Valley over there, but that's probably the biggest thing that I have in 4A.
Do you think there was any protected team in 4A boys that there was an alternative to that? Because we had West Valley ranked pretty high. I don't know if I would have had West Valley on the outskirts, but I also agree with you. I think Auburn was a top 8 team. I think part of what happened was the NPSL kind of flaming out in the bi-district tournament did not help Auburn's cause, and losing convincingly in the semifinals to Puyallup on its home court did not help either. But was there another team in the top 8 that you just kind of went, maybe that was a team that didn't have to be in the top 8?
I could make a case for all of them. I really think, though, that Puyallup and Emerald Ridge, I think one of those 2 teams would have been the team that, if either one of those teams doesn't make the district championship, I think that Auburn probably slides into that spot. But like I said, I feel like all those teams have a strong case for it. And I mean, there's 9 teams for 8 spots. Someone's got to be left out.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. 9 teams. This is the classic example of too many teams for not enough spots. And unfortunately, Auburn was the team that was kind of left on the outside looking in. Double-digit seed on either side on the 4A boys, 4A girls. Dangerous, a team that you feel like can make some noise, win this weekend, and maybe get to the Dome or Coliseum and make some noise there.
This one was really interesting on the boys' side. I'm looking at Olympia, and I'm kind of looking at, they have 7 losses on the season, but a lot of those losses are really close games to Sumner, to Puyallup, to Bellarmine, to Emerald Ridge. They have a 3-point loss to Emerald Ridge earlier in the season. They're, kind of riding some momentum right now, winning loser out games to get into the regional round. And I think that they've got some size to them. They're they're not the oldest team. They're kind of junior heavy. I feel like they could be a team that could make some noise this year and maybe even next year at state.
If you could assure me that Ethan Harris was going to be 100% healthy this weekend, Camus as a 12 seed would be about as dangerous a double-digit seed as there is in any classification. Let's go to the 3A tournament. Girls or boys, a seeding decision that you looked at and kind of rolled your eyes.
It's Edmonds Woodway for me. Edmonds Woodway boys, hands down. Though that team is 2 shots away from being a one-loss team, or even I think it's a one-loss team. The problem with 3A boys obviously is metrics. Look, the metrics totally skew everything because according to my stuff, according to RPI and everything, O'Day and Eastside Catholic shouldn't be up there, but we know the eye test tells us that they should be. And Edmonds Woodway, I mean, yeah, District 1's a little down this year, but this is a team that was the runner-ups last year who graduated 4. They have 5 back from last year's team. I mean, I don't think they're as strong as the last year's was, but this is a really dangerous team that I think maybe I think they'll make it to Friday. I really do think that they'll make it to Friday.
Got to watch Roosevelt Bellevue girls in the Sea King District semifinals last week. I came away with that game more encouraged that Roosevelt or somebody could knock off the number 1 seed Wolverines. Really impressed with Roosevelt. If they can clean up some of their backcourt decision making, ball handling against a really scrappy full court press type Bellevue team, I think they're going to be right there. I was floored that they were the 4th seed. We've had them number 2 all year. I know that they didn't get to the finals. Unfortunately, that's the way the Sea King, they were upset in the Metro League Championship by Eastside Catholic and then got put into the Bellevue side of the Sea King District bracket. But I think those 2 teams were clearly the best teams in the Sea King District. For them to drop to the 4 seed and watch Snohomish and Ridgeline move up, I was really, really surprised by that. And now a matchup that I think we all would have liked to seen in the championship match can't happen. It can happen in the semifinals if both teams get to Friday night in the winner's side of the bracket. Double-digit seed in the 3A, girls or boys, Matt Evans, who can do damage?
Well, I've already made my case for Edmonds Woodway, so I'm going to flip over to the girls' side for this one. I'm looking at White River. So that if anybody who watched the District 3 championship game between White River and North Thurston, if you just look at the score and see North Thurston win by 14, that doesn't tell anything about the story of that game. White River led that game for most of the game, and then North Thurston just exploded in the third quarter to come back and take advantage of that. The thing about White River that I really like is that they have some size, but they're also really young, and I mean, this is if a young team like this can take a pretty experienced, good North Thurston team to the brink, I think that they could make some noise not only this year, but like I said, for on the 4A side, I think they could be really good next year as well.
You mentioned Edmonds Woodway boys. I'm going to say that the district champion up there, Shorewood, 10 seed, and Enumclaw. I think there are 3 boys double-digit seeds. Enumclaw's tough. They gave Lincoln easily its toughest game in the West Central District, or I should say District 3 tournament. Very controlled, very disciplined. I like all 3 of those teams. I would not be surprised if one of those teams got to the quarterfinals in the Tahoma Dome. Let's look at the 2A tournaments, Matt Evans. A seeding decision that's not right.
I didn't like that Anacortes was 6. I thought that they probably should have been. I think they should have been on at least 1 seed higher, maybe even 2 seeds higher. I mean, District 1, a little down this year. I think Linden obviously is not where they normally would be, and that's a very interesting story for them. But I don't know. I thought Anacortes could have been comparatively to maybe Pullman. I think they should have probably been above Pullman. Maybe not Tumwater, but that's just kind of my thought.
Yeah, I agree with you, and this is the one that bugs me too. The District 1 champion, I know that the district is a little bit down, but the District 1 champion, the district that usually fares the best traditionally in the 2A tournament, is behind the top 2 seeds from District 4. Make it make sense, man. I know what Tumwater's record is. I know RA Long is undefeated. They deserve that 2 seed. I have a real problem with Anacortes not being the 3 seed or 4 seed. To me, it could be Sela and Anacortes. I think Anacortes beating Linden, the traditional powerhouse, Brian Roper. I know this time of year they've been actually playing better. They got a couple guys back here recently, and for them to beat an improving and still traditionally good Linden team in the finals, I thought that deserved a home protected seed, and they didn't get it. So you and I are in agreement on that. 2A double digit seed on the 2A girls or boys side. Anybody that you look at and go, yes, they can flash, they can do damage.
I think this one's clear. It's the Columbia River boys. The Columbia River boys, while looking at their record, it's kind of meh. They have 2 losses to RA Long by less than a possession. They played Washougal tough. They played Skyview tough. Skyview, very, very tough 4A boys team there. This is a team that, they aren't the biggest team out there, but when they catch fire, they can hang with anybody. And that's, going toe to toe with RA Long 3 times this year, I think is proof enough to me that if they catch fire, and I think traditionally teams that play on Wednesday have a huge advantage over the teams that just play Thursday. I think that they could catch somebody on Thursday, catch somebody sleeping, and maybe make a run to the semifinals.
You know what I'm really realizing in the middle of our conversation, Matt Evans, is 2A girls seem to get it right. There's not much that we can say about the 2A girls. I think it was a fantastic job. I think it was bulletproof, to be honest with you. But you're right. 2A boys, I like it. Same thing. I like the Columbia River pick. I like Bainbridge. Scott Orness in his first year, they've got size. I know they have 2 or 3 lopsided losses, 2 of them to actually 3 of them to Bremerton. They have another lopsided loss somewhere early in the year, and I think people would look at them and go, they can't be that good. I think they're built for the state tournament. I'm not saying that they're going to go win it, but I think as a 10 seed, and it would not surprise me if this team got to the quarterfinals and made some noise and come off for Scott Orness. 1A, girls and boys, seeding decision where Matt Evans and the committee members arm wrestle.
Wow. I did not like Wapato girls at 11. Not one bit. There's some really good teams in the middle of the 1A girls there, but the Wapato girls have 5 losses, and a couple of them are really tight to Royal, who's your clear number 5 seed. I don't see an 11 seed for those guys. I think that they're not going to be the team I talk about, but I think that that's another team that you could really make a case for making a decent surprise at that tournament.
I like the 1A boys bracket. My biggest problem with that is Annie Wright. I know they had a little bit of a brief blip before their postseason, but look who Annie Wright played. I mean,
exactly.
They went out and they played some dudes in bigger classifications. I don't need to. I mean, we can name them. Bellevue, Glacier Peak, Prairie, Puyallup. A 5 seed. They won their district and were the 5 seed behind Bear Creek. I thought those 2 should have been flipped. To be honest with you, if you ask the teams that are ranked higher who they'd rather play, Annie Wright or Bear Creek, I'll tell you in a private poll, I can tell you who they pick, and it wouldn't be the 5 seed in this particular case. But all in all, I think that 1A bracket has some real interest with Zilla being the number 1 seed. Double digit seeds in 1A, girls or boys. Who can make some beautiful music, Matt Evans?
This is my longest shot. I'm taking the 15 seed on the 1A boys side. I'm taking Kingsway Christian. And the thing about Kingsway Christian that really, really intrigues me is the fact that, they have some size for a 1A, for the 1A classification. This is a team that is, they have 5 seniors. They're going to be desperate to make it to the Dome, having to get through that play-in game. They do have a couple of really tough losses this year, but they've played Fort Vancouver tough when they have played them. They probably should have beat La Center. They had a tight one with Columbia River, and I think that if they, if they can start out fast and they can get an early lead and then just lock down defense, I think that they can make a run.
I talked to a notable East Side coach when I'm doing my rankings for 1A a lot, checking with him every week. And the one team on the West Side that maybe doesn't get a whole lot of publicity that he's always been high on. I'm going back here the last couple of years, and especially these past 2 years, is Cascade Christian. Mm-hmm. And I think the 1A Nisqually League was pretty good. I don't know if they have a great team like they did with Annie Wright last year, but I would say that they're a solid 2A type team. 4 or 5 of them. I mean, Bellevue Christian didn't even get in the field because the district tournament allotment was small. Cascade Christian beating Seattle Christian. They did lose to Annie Wright in the district championship game, but a team with a lot of experience, well coached. Hey, I think that's a team that's ready to make a move in the 1A tournament in Yakima. To be or not to be on the 2B girls and boys.
That is the question.
Yes. Which seeding question bugs you the most, Matt Evans?
Man, I thought the Adna girls kind of got shafted. I mean, yeah, they have a couple of late losses, but they've played a brutal schedule this year, and with only 4 losses in the 7th seed. I mean, I don't know. I know you have to put them. You have a recent loss to Cle-Elum, so you have to put them below them, and they have a recent loss. I think they have a recent loss to Toodle as well. But I don't know, man. I didn't like that. Did not sit well with me.
I get it, man. I guess you can't get down. What was it, 30-2 to Toodle Lake in your district semifinals? Mm-hmm. Now, to their credit, they did battle back and get through and earn one of those berths. But yeah, I mean, one of the best coached teams in 2B girls. The hard one for me is what would you have done with, obviously it came down to Mount Vernon Christian and Adna. Mount Vernon Christian did win that district. Not a great district up there, but a team that's done traditionally really well in 1B. Hasn't been bad in 2B, but Adna's been really good in 2B. And they're always knocking on the door, winning a state game or two. Yeah, it is. It's actually a little surprising that both Adna teams are in unprotected games this week. That District 4, it's clear that they've had 3 great teams on both sides, and Adna seems to be the one that got kind of left out in the cold on both sides. Double-digit seeds in 2B, Matt Evans. Which one do you think, don't sleep on this team?
I'm kind of leaning towards the Raymond South Bend girls. They kind of, they've got I really like the makeup of their team. It's kind of similar to Kingsway Christian, and that they do have a lot of seniors, and I feel like they're going to play a lot with desperation. But I think that the thing that's really interesting about these guys is the fact that, yeah, they have 7 losses on the season, but 5 of those came before Christmas. They've been playing really good basketball in maybe not the best league in the state. Obviously, Pacific 2B is not really, Titans of 2B, but this is a team that has winning tradition. They have winning ways right now, and I think that they're a team that could probably make. I don't think they're going to make it to Friday, but I think that they could make it to the Dome. I think they could make somebody's life really interesting on Wednesday.
Did you see a defending champion in the 2B boys who starting to play its best ball at the end of the year? Mm-hmm. You see who beat Tri-Cities Prep? Mm-hmm. And they're the 12th seed, Columbia Burbank. Todd Schumacher, guy knows how to coach. I mean, he told me very early in the season, we're going to take serious lumps with all the graduation, all those good players he graduated. But he was very, very optimistic by January or February that this team was going to find a gear. I think they found it, Matt Evans. I would not want to play the defending state champs as a double-digit seed with the way they're playing. They're playing their best ball right now. And our final classification, the 1B Decisions in 1B seating, Matt Evans. Ones that you're going to write a letter on.
I don't have anything for 1B. Both sides. I don't have anything. I feel really good about what they did. I think you could I mean, the only gripe that you could even consider would be Wakai Kamwilapa Valley, but there's a direct result there. So they've I think that they pretty much top 8. They may not be exactly how I want them to be ordered, but I think that they nailed these pretty good.
Oh, come on. Nitpick with me, pal. You don't think Lummi Nation girls would beat Pateros?
Okay, yeah. I
Come
think they would.
on.
I think they
The
would,
Lummi,
but
they lose to Cross Point, and all of a sudden they're barely a protected seed on the girls' side. No, I
so
think they nailed it.
I think that was one of those travel things. I think that because if you look at that, they've got Pateros going to Garfield Palouse and they've got Lummi playing Nia Bay. I really think that Lummi is the 7 seed, but I think that they looked at that and went, maybe we could, maybe it's close enough to we could make this switch and it would be okay. That's just I don't have any inside information, but that's just kind of from what my perspective, that's kind of what I would have done.
Come on, you know what the worst decision in this 1B boys or girls bracket is, right?
It's clearly Oroville at 20 and Eniad at 19. I don't know. I don't know. That's
No, this goes back to the fall, man. Nia Bay boys travel. I mean, can you imagine how many miles Tyler Swan's going to be logging in a bus for football and basketball?
yeah.
Gosh, it's going to be another long weekend for the Nia Bay Red Devils, having to go all that way to play a regional round game.
And then no matter what, they're gonna have to go all the way back to Spokane next week anyway. It's yeah.
At least they get to stay there, Matt Evans.
That is true. That is true.
No, awesome job. Actually, I thought the 1Bs across the board were well done. I thought very very sound judgment, good brackets, all the brackets by and large. Great job by our selection committee members that put in an endless amount of hours, meet every week, and then obviously Sunday, met for the final time and got the job done. Matt Evans, thank you so much for joining us and talking about some of the brackets. And the next 2 weeks, it doesn't get any better during the whole WIA season.
Can I throw a team out there really quick?
Absolutely.
This is my 1B double-digit seed. Okay.
Okay.
Guys, listen, like if you're watching this, get closer to the camera. I'm going to tell you about a team that nobody's heard about, but you need to watch. Tushi High School. Watch that team play. If that team gets hot and they hit their threes and they hit an 8th grader.
Dude, Lauren and I got our Tushi basketball T-shirts in the mail earlier this week. We've been on the Tushi bandwagon, man.
I'm talking about the other people. I'm talking about our fan base.
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
I would say 90% of the people don't know where Tushi is. Well, then again, I don't think 90% of the people in the state know where Walla Walla is. But I totally agree. And I forgot we didn't talk about a double-digit seed, but I'm glad you brought up Tushi basketball. That community is really really excited. Could play. I don't have the results in front of me, but the school up north where all the Kinko players formed. They were going to
Summit Classical.
Yeah, Summit Classical. They had the two brothers at Summit Classical, the 6'7" senior brother. It should be a great game if those two teams get to play at Richland High School on Saturday. You're right. Aylin Garnett. I think that's the 8th grader you were mentioning. Mm-hmm. What a fantastic story out of Tushi. The way they've won some games, the way that crowds have come out. And I imagine that there will be some people in Spokane, if they get to the Spokane arena, that they'll come out and see Aylin Garnett. He's special. He is very, very good.
Mm-hmm. And we got him for 4 more years after this. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't that be something if he was in 1B basketball for 5 years? He might score 4,000 points.
Be awesome. Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks to our viewers for joining us in our pre-regional midweek podcast. I want to thank our guests, Blake Conley, the former coach at Union, to talk about boys basketball, Pete Smith, the former Tahoma girls coach, to talk about the girls brackets, and then our friend Matt Evans to give us his 2 cents on maybe some of the minimal questionable decisions in the seeding and some of the double-digit seeds that can do damage here this week. I'm Todd Milles, your host. Join us next week before last week of WIA basketball before the tournaments shift to the Tacoma Dome, Yakima Valley Sun Dome, and Spokane Arena. This podcast is brought to you by Varsity Washington, your source for high school sports news, rankings, and more around the state of Washington. You can listen to new episodes of the VarsityWA Podcast weekly on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. And for more from Varsity WA, visit us at varsitywanews.com and subscribe for daily posts covering the high school sports landscape around the state. A special thank you to our guests on this episode and to Carl Johnson and Matt Bueller of the Portland-based band Edith and Axon for providing the music you hear at the beginning and end of this podcast each week. You can find the band on Instagram at Edith Axon Official. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in to the VarsityWA Podcast. For producer Lauren Smith, I'm your host, Todd Milles. We will be back next week.